All right, y'all. Good evening. We should be live as far as I can tell. Thank you for being here as always. My name is Ryan Tower. This is Living in the Logos. I've got just a little stream planned for us tonight. There's a It's been somewhat of a dry couple weeks as far as news goes, but there's always good things to talk about. So, as always, I appreciate you being here. Please, if you don't mind, like, comment, and subscribe on the video. That really helps me a lot. It's pretty much the only way that the channel is being shared at all or that new people are discovering it. So I appreciate you doing that. And most importantly, let me know what you think. I want to know what you guys are thinking about the content, what your opinions are about the topics, and I enjoy that. Even if you disagree, please let me know. I encourage it. And so tonight I got a few things that I wanted to talk about before we get into the actual show. I want to just give you an idea of kind of what I have on my plate and what I intend to do with the future, just in the short future, I should say, not so distant. So what I want to do is starting next week is do a couple shows every week that are just kind of news focused and more general, a little less detail oriented, maybe a little more lighthearted, a little more fun, and then save maybe one stream every week for a more heavy and more nuanced and detailed stream like book reviews and things like that. So that's kind of the intention going forward. If you guys have suggestions, I'm really open to them. I kind of, ultimately what I want to do with the channel is to use this as a way to connect with people who think like I do or don't think like I do, but people that want to build community, that want to grow in their understanding, that are interested in making the world a better place. So we're looking to connect with those people, and hopefully what I'd like to do first is to build the Discord community, so to have you guys join in the Discord and we can have an ongoing conversation in there and just see kind of where things go. But so the first thing that I have planned in the future, as in way of the long form video content, is ta-da! I'm going to be doing a book review on Alexander Karp's The Technological Republic. So if you don't know who Alexander Karp is, he is the co-founder of Palantir along with Peter Thiel. He is a technocrat. He is an oligarch. He is a wealthy Jewish billionaire, multimillionaire, however you want to define it. And so I'm going to go through the book and take a look at what it is that Alex Karp thinks about Palantir, what their underlying philosophy is, kind of what their approach is to the world, why they created the business the way they did, why they made the decisions that they made. Ultimately, if you want a little bit of preview, this appears to me to be a book that articulates the onboarding of a more technological intelligence network, and that's kind of what Palantir is. And so here I'll read you this. I'll read you this paragraph at the end of the little info blurb here. So it says, in this groundbreaking treatise, Palantir co-founder and CEO Alexander Karp and Nicholas Zimiska offer a searing critique of our collective abandonment of ambition, arguing that in order for the US and its allies to retain their global edge and preserve the freedoms we take for granted, the software industry must renew its commitment to addressing our most urgent challenges, including the new arms race of artificial intelligence. The government, in turn, must embrace the most effective features of the engineering mindset that has propelled Silicon Valley's success. Now, there's a lot to be said about the book, and you know, Alex Karp's ideas are extremely important, especially philosophically speaking, because Peter Thiel, Palantir, the network, and kind of the coalition of technocrats that exist in that sphere of influence are incredibly influential right now. They are on the ascendant, as they say. Their power is increasing by the day, and they are looking to articulate a new vision for the future of military and intelligence and policing at home. And this is kind of part of that spiel. So we're going to take a look at that, and I want to try and finish it in the next couple weeks. But I want it to be detailed and thorough. There are a lot of things that Alex Karp says that I agree with, and the ultimately though, this is a good introduction to the episode today because Alex Karp is a hyper wealthy and hyper influential Jew that not only operates in the realm of political influence, but is a Silicon Valley, what would you call it? He's a Silicon Valley kind of prophetic voice, something like an influencer inside of Silicon Valley, somebody that the Silicon Valley thinkers and movers look towards as a centering kind of focus. So Alexander Karp's opinions are important, and we're going to talk about those coming up. And so the next thing that I wanted to talk about, which was interesting to me nonetheless. Actually, you know what? Let's get through some of the nasty stuff first. All right. There's a couple things that I actually we'll keep the window small, and we're going to look at. I've got a couple news stories that I want to cover. I'll be really fast. I know they're not as fun to look at, but the this is arguably the most important thing that's happening right now. This news article is from Axios. If you want to go and take a look at it at all on your own, Trump doesn't oppose Netanyahu's plan for full Gaza occupation, says U.S. officials. Now, oftentimes, U.S. officials can be an unreliable source. In this case, though, we've had Trump himself on multiple instances has informed us about his position concerning Gaza. Their idea is to let Israel do whatever they want. They are trying to organize with the Gulf states a way to govern Gaza and the Palestinian region once all of the people are removed. You know, I don't want to get dragged into talking about I don't want to get dragged into talking about the realities of what's happening in Palestine, but if you are unaware and haven't figured it out by now, it's a horrific human rights disaster. People are using the word genocide. I don't think that's inaccurate. The audacity of the Jewish leadership in carrying this out, the complete disregard for public sentiment, for the opinions of people who matter to the decision making process has been unbelievable. And it's fascinating because it's difficult not to be discouraged by the cognitive dissonance that's possible, not only just in America, but throughout the world. And it really, what it says to me is the amount of influence and power that the Jewish lobby has, not just in America, but in other realms of political influence in Europe, is is really terrifying. And it seems very likely that they're going to continue carrying out this genocide, whatever you want to call it. The Palestinian people are either going to have to be moved or killed. Excuse me. Those are the only two options. It's the only way that the region can come to any sense of peace, and it looks like that's the way that things are headed. So, this is not surprising, although it is unfortunate. I think that, the impact that this is going to have on the reputation of the United States in the world, I mean, obviously on Trump as well, and his administration is going to be irreparable, in my opinion. And so you really hate to see it. You really hate to see it. But at the same time, if we take a step back and we think a little bit about what has really been going on in the Trump administration from the jump. I mean, we've known that he's taken hundreds of millions of dollars from really influential Jewish donors. We knew at the time that that money was taken from those Jewish donors during the campaign what those Jewish donors wanted in return. And the gist of what they wanted was a green light to take care of the situation in Gaza. We have documents from the Jewish government themselves going all the way back to the 70s, talking about their plans and their intentions to occupy Gaza. And so what we're seeing is more or less just the public facing result of a very long and arduous campaign on behalf of the Jewish Zionists to carry this out. And so, it's unfortunate to see Trump take the bait on this one, you know? And so just keep in mind this is going to be a returning issue. The situation in Iran has not ended. I know a lot of the right wing people on the internet have kind of made it a habit to call people panicans, people that were concerned about the fact that Trump was intentionally, or was very obviously carrying out the intentions of the Jewish lobby by bombing Iran. And not that that's a new thing, but just that it's obvious and clear. And the war hasn't ended yet. They're calling this most recent exchange between Israel and Iran the 12-day war. In my opinion, it's not over yet. Iran has stated countless times that their nuclear weapons productions were not completely destroyed. They're very clear about that. Maybe they're lying, maybe they're not, but the reality is that whether or not Trump or we believe that Iran has nuclear weapons or their facilities weren't destroyed, they're committed to continually pursuing nuclear weapons if Israel will not relent. And so the situation doesn't seem changed. It seems that we're in the same position we were before the bombing of the nuclear facilities. And if anything, I believe that the reputation, the geopolitical sway, and the influence of the United States and their ability to negotiate has been ruined, because in every repeatable instance, the negotiators on behalf of the United States have proven themselves to be untrustworthy to the Iranians. And so it's a geopolitical nightmare. There's no situation that I see, unless there's a geopolitical agreement that's made above the level of Netanyahu and the leaders of Iran, then it's likely that confrontation is going to come back. You know, if we want to do just a fair assessment of what's been delivered on behalf of the Trump administration so far, it doesn't look good. We have no mass deportations. We have a lot of theatrical arrests. We have a lot of grandstanding for the media. We have a lot of nicknames being thrown around, a lot of rhetoric, which is exactly what we had in the first administration, but really not much is getting done except for things that appear to be beneficial to either Trump's family, or the people in Trump's cabinet, i.e., crypto legislation, which is going to profit billions of dollars for those companies. A lot of the things that Trump took campaign money for have gotten done. For instance, the long litany of checklists that were given to Trump to take care of on behalf of the Jewish lobby have been speedily and hastily addressed, right? All of the promises that he made to Americans, and all of, what would be mostly white middle class Christians that voted for him, all of those promises have not been kept. And this is going to increasingly become a problem, and you're already seeing it now. And we're going to be talking about this as one of the third stories tonight, is that there's a burgeoning anger on the right wing, especially in young white right wing people that are, that were generally considered conservative before. A lot of those people are being radicalized by the lack of commitment and promises being kept. So it's something that we're going to be dealing with for a while. So we have no mass deportations. We have no Epstein files. We have H-1B visas doing record numbers. We have a bombing of Iran with more confrontation coming in the future. No end to the war in Ukraine, increasing funding and military aid for that war. I mean, no change at all really to monetary policy yet, although I reserve the hope that Trump, in alignment with his desire to profit off of crypto, is going to do some good things as far as the economy is concerned. And, you could maybe make an argument that the tariffs are a meaningful change from what the US has been doing for the past 50 years, although arguably and obviously and demonstrably not enough to really make much of a difference, apart from, the companies and the corporations and the private equity firms and people on Wall Street that are positioned to benefit from prior knowledge of the tariffs. Those things will happen, but for regular people are not going to benefit much from this kind of thing. The idea, for instance, that taking in money for tariffs is going to somehow counterbalance the debt, it's just, the whole thing is pretty laughably absurd. But what I'm saying is that the idea of tariffs at their core is a genuinely positive change in a direction that I think would be better for the country if it was done seriously and, with the aptitude necessary to make it successful. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's been Israel first, like across the board. And I'm not It is what it is at this point. It is what it is. And I just think it's unfortunate that the impact of this is going to be very difficult to see a path where anybody that is knowledgeable on the right wing will be convinced to return to the Republican plantation. I mean, we have midterms coming up fairly soon, and it is my opinion that the ultimate destination of whatever this MAGA movement is that happened over from 2016 until now, it seems to be that Peter Thiel and his cronies have created JD Vance as the heir apparent, and with the intention of having him step into the credibility and the momentum that Trump has built in the MAGA movement. And I think we have good reasons to believe that. And so ultimately, Trump will end up being a stepping stone, in my opinion. And I think that's kind of been the idea in the minds of people like Peter Thiel and JD Vance for quite some time. And so that's kind of it on Trump. I'm obviously disappointed. I don't want to spend all my time talking about it. I think everybody pretty much knows where we stand. But that's kind of the nasty stuff first. There's one other article that I wanted to cover that's very interesting. And you might not have heard of it before, but there's a group called Dialogue. I know I hadn't heard of it until fairly recently. Axios calls it a secretive forum. They are planning a DC area campus, and you will not be surprised to find out who's involved with this, right? So here, let's take a look. Dialogue, often compared to a tech era Bilderberg, has quietly become one of the most elite and mysterious gatherings for CEOs, elected officials, and intellectual heavyweights. Dialogue leaders are in active discussions to buy a physical venue in Virginia, just outside Washington, to serve as a permanent hub for its off-the-record meetings, the tipster says. The decision to buy land, then build within commuting distance of the Capitol shows the group isn't just kissing President Trump's ring, but plans to be engaged in Washington long after this term. Let's take a look at some of the past Dialogue participants. Past Dialogue participants who cut across a wide swath of elite influencers include Elon Musk, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, Larry Summers, Chamath Palihapitiya, Henry Kravis, Maryland Governor Wes Moore, Eric Schmidt, Grover Norquist, Anne Marie Slaughter, Robert Hur, and Sophia Bush. Also, Senator Cory Booker, Jared Kushner, Saudi Ambassador to the U.S. Rima Al Saud, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, European Commission Vice Chair Kaja Kallas, Ted Cruz, social psychologist Jonathan Haidt, chess champ and activist Garry Kasparov, pastor and author Rick Warren, and Council on Foreign Relations President Emeritus Richard Haass. So, in other words, it's the Bilderberg group, but it's like a newer version of it. It's a revamped like tech CEO version. Imagine if if Steve Jobs hosted the Bilderberg instead of like whoever it was, Klaus Schwab, that was doing it, or one of those very Dr. Evil looking characters. And so the reason I wanted you guys to see this, I mean, we're never going to find out anything about what happens at these meetings. They're not available to the public. They don't have a website. They don't obviously reveal what's been discussed. We could say that the past participants tell Axios the retreats feature small, moderated conversations with assigned seats and absolute confidentiality. To, quote, ensure participants can challenge themselves intellectually and spiritually, as our source put it. And so ultimately, this is the gist, right? We know that, let's start with JD Vance. If we rewind back to when JD Vance is becoming a political character, right? He's basically selected out of Yale by Peter Thiel and David Frum, who is another influential thinker in the right wing, who's responsible for crafting and molding a lot of the right-wing minds that are influential today. They selected JD Vance out of Yale. They funded him. They basically financed him so that when he left school, he would have the time to write his hokey, stupid book, which is called Hillbilly Elegy. And Hillbilly Elegy was a book that J.D. Vance wrote as a way for himself to begin the skin suiting of a moderate centrist Republican, like the common sense. He had to sell himself as somebody who wasn't an elitist that went to Yale and wasn't financed and perpetuated and given his political career by somebody like Peter Thiel. And now when we look at what all of the movements in the world that Peter Thiel and Alex Karp and Palantir and the PayPal mafia in general, if you look at their actions and you look at where their money is, what they've invested their time in, it's very clear that they're building a network or an apparatus or a machine of some kind, if you want to call it an influence machine, or whatever you want to say. It's an emerging political network of money and influence that is capable, what we've seen in this last presidential race, it is capable of exercising and leveraging its influence on the political scene in a very real and tangible way, right? So Peter Thiel gives J.D. Vance this money. J.D. Vance ends up as vice president in very short order. Peter Thiel was involved in the first Trump administration, hiring the people that were coming into the cabinet. He was responsible for telling Donald Trump to pick J.D. Vance, suggesting it, introducing them. All of this stuff is going on. And so Peter Thiel, it seems that he's functioning as not necessarily, I don't think he's necessarily a leader in a grand sense, but whatever this new network is that is emerging, which is going to be something like a military/intelligence network, it seems to be centralizing itself around Peter Thiel. And now don't forget that Peter Thiel spent time in meetings with Jeffrey Epstein in Manhattan. He's not unfamiliar with the world of intelligence. And what's remarkable is that Palantir, his company, it's obviously pretty well known that the only customer of Palantir for the first many years of its existence was the CIA. And so when somebody like Peter Thiel, who became a billionaire by investing in Silicon Valley projects and creating companies and then becoming his own hedge fund, et cetera, when these kind of people start to, for instance, as we see over here, when they start to buy property outside of Washington, D.C., with the intention of hosting private, secretive, highly elite intellectual and spiritual gatherings, it should be something that we pay attention to, and people who are involved in these meetings should be called out on it. If these people are seen in public in interviews, people, if they were doing real journalism, would be interested to find out what was being discussed at these meetings. And, of course, the concern is always going to be, how is this affecting policy? And the answer would obviously be, it's creating policy for sure. That's what they're doing there. Do you think that people want to just go somewhere and talk in private so that they can talk about the Mets game or whatever, or they can talk about soccer and football? They're obviously in the meetings to discuss the ways that they're going to manipulate and deceive the public into either making more money, getting their agendas completed, whatever, fill in the blank. But that's obviously what's going on. And so you have this situation where a new intelligence network is being created kind of in real time. And so Palantir, X, the platform X that Elon Musk owns, the satellites, the space travel, the artificial intelligence, which has already been basically installed in the federal government, the data that Doge obtained is being shared with Palantir. Like this is happening. They're building this network of influence and power that they're going to leverage in the next election to get J.D. Vance elected. And this building, all of this planning that Peter Thiel is doing is very clearly with the intention to corner the political power structure and to make it amenable to his wishes and to his agenda. And that's the reason I'm going to be doing the review on the Alex Karp book, because what Peter Thiel and Alex Karp and the people at Palantir and Elon Musk and these people think is the future we're going to get. It's not really about us building a future. We're getting the future that they deliver. They have the hundreds of billions of dollars. They have the political influence and the power. So, that's the future we're getting. So we need to understand what it is that they believe about the world and what it is that they want to create in the future. And Peter Thiel is, I will tell you, you can watch the last stream that I did about him. He's not the kind of person that you want to leave to his own devices to create your future for you. He's not the kind of guy you want to do that. So this is something that the right wing needs to become aware of, and to become aware of very quickly, because Peter Thiel is involved in nearly all of alternative media. You know, people will say, I don't watch Fox News or I don't watch CNN. It's like, well, Peter Thiel owns Rumble. Peter Thiel is involved in all of this stuff. So odds are very likely that wherever you're getting your information from, it is in some way involved with someone who knows Peter Thiel or is in his network, et cetera, et cetera. So we need to be aware of these people. We need to know what they're thinking and what their plans are. So just know that Peter Thiel and this intelligence network is a thing that's happening, and we need to be aware of it and try and raise awareness. Try and, you know, these people need to be confronted in public as much as possible, and that's about the best that we can do. So just know about dialogue, think about it, do some research, tell some people. And so the next thing that I wanted to talk about is this this Jubilee video. So this is going to be, it's a little bit a longer clip, but I want you to see the whole thing because it's really, really interesting in terms of the political discourse, how this plays out. Now, if you're not much of a political nerd, I would, you know, not hold it against you. It might maybe not the most fascinating thing in the world, but it's important because what's playing out in the world right now is, I guess it is always, but at this time specifically, is a very high stakes clash of political conceptions, ideas about how the world should be. How is it that the country should conceive of itself, and how is it that it should maintain its existence into the future? All these things are starting to clash in the world. They're, you know, because of the uncertainty about the future, because of, you know, the implications of just the timing and the geopolitics, things are reaching a really high vibration, if you will. And it's important to understand that the terms of the discourse, or what would be called the Overton window, which is basically just a phrase that describes what is presently the acceptable bounds of discourse, that window is shifting. So you'll often hear people talking about the Overton window is shifting to the right or shifting to the left. And right now, the Overton window is shifting to the right. And that's significant because in times past where we've seen this happen, it's, you know, it's possible that it gives way to a kind of authoritarianism. It doesn't have to be that way, but it is possible that it does become that. And so it's important to be aware of. There are some things that are, let's get to the video. I won't try and preempt myself, but let's take a look at how this exchange plays out. And I'm going to pause every now and then and try and provide some commentary.
And quite frankly, the fact is,
oh, sorry, I had it muted there. Let's try that again.
The Constitution is a document that should seek to serve us. Yes. And when it fails to seek to serve us, that can be amended. Laws can be changed. And quite frankly, the fact is, we're defending things in this country that shouldn't be defended. The First Amendment should not defend pornography and making children and women be victimized, making women and children be victimized as a result of that. I think they...
Okay, so, and this is what I mean about the Overton window being shifted to the right. Now, this is, granted, this is a room of young people who are specifically chosen to represent what would be considered far right views on the show. But just the idea that the First Amendment shouldn't protect pornography in terms of freedom of speech, that type of political stance would have been considered so far outside of the bounds of what was acceptable discourse. It would have been considered like, you know, this is, you know, the Stepford Wives level of conservatism. You know what I mean? So this is the point that I'm trying to make with this exchange, is that we need to be cognizant of the fact that the discourse is moving to the right. And for some of us, I am a right-wing person, so this is not necessarily bad for somebody like me, although I'm cautiously optimistic because, like I said before, I understand the bugs and the features of moving into the realm of right-wing political reality. So we have to be aware of that stuff. But let's continue and hear out what our friend Connor
I think things
here
like
has
blasphemy shouldn't be allowed per the First Amendment. I think that, quite frankly, there are a lot of legal processes that are enabling criminals and bad people to fully enact their will in this country in the name of the Constitution or following the Constitution. So, quite frankly, if Trump is anti-Constitution, good, and I think he should go further.
So this is wonderfully revealing.
Okay, again, these types of positions to be said like out in public, of course, people have always believed them. There's always been kind of an element of radical on both the right and the left wing, obviously. But for these type of opinions to get the attention that they're getting and to get the response that they're getting, even amongst people who were selected to be, right wing, people proudly claiming to be far right is a new phenomenon. There's always some people doing it, but to see this level of mainstreaming of the idea that the Constitution isn't enough, and if somebody is opposed to the Constitution, that's a good thing, and we should go beyond the Constitution. Now, these are things that I don't necessarily disagree with. I'm just saying that it's an interesting case study to see how things have shifted quite a bit. So let's keep going.
Of the modern conservative mindset. So I appreciate you spelling it out so openly. Just checking, do you support the Second Amendment?
I do.
Okay, surprise, I was shocked to hear that. I'm saying that Donald Trump is defying the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the 14th Amendment. He's thinking of defying the 12th and 22nd Amendments. You're saying you don't care about the Constitution, but actually you do because you quite like the Second Amendment. You just don't like the bits that you disagree with. Can I just be clear on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm more than willing to amend it and include
whenever
the
it's in
Second
your
Amendment.
favor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So can Democrats do the same when they're in office?
No, absolutely not. Because
so you don't
it's the
believe in
friend
democracy?
Enemy. No, I don't. Absolutely not.
What do you believe in?
Okay, again, and this is what I mean. Again, oh, I don't believe in democracy. No, of course I do not. These kind of ideas are new. They're new to the political scene. And what's interesting is that there's obviously a lot of nuance involved in the conversation about what is the best political system or which system of organization is going to deliver the most good for the most people. And all these debates get really nuanced and detailed. But to have the conversation emerging, or even just to have the question put to the public, like maybe democracy is actually not so good. This is new. It's new to the political discourse in terms of the ideas being mainstream. There's always been political theorists and stuff that have debated these things, but it's interesting to see young people on the right wing beginning to consider these ideas pretty thoroughly, obviously. And you're going to see that this is not the end of this line of thinking. So let's keep watching.
Autocracy.
By who?
Honestly, quite frankly, anyone who is in line with Catholic teaching.
Donald Trump is not Catholic.
Of course, he's not. I completely agree, and that's part of the problem.
You don't support Trump?
No, I don't. I didn't even vote for him. I wrote in like John Pork or someone. I can't even remember.
Why did you vote if you don't believe in democracy and you want autocracy?
Well, because quite frankly, I voted. I kind of voted just to.
I came with this argument, but I'm bored of my own argument. I'm much more interested in this. So
yeah, absolutely.
How do we get to an autocracy?
I think, quite frankly, that if we are able to enact local leaders.
Who is the we, by the way?
I think, quite frankly, these far-right conservatives sitting right around
White
me.
people?
Yeah,
no
absolutely.
So,
well, actually, I have quite.
Some of the people in this room don't make the cut from what I can see visually.
Actually, hold on for a moment. I do think that there are people who happen to not be white who do actually have history in this country and have roots in this country. For instance, from the Mexican-American War, we subsumed a lot of territory of people who have far stakes in this country who happen to be Hispanic or what have you. I'm for defending the traditional demographics of this country, which is majority white and should stay that way.
How does the United States? I mean, we've gone so off topic, but how does the United States look?
So I just want to say something about that, because I think this is something that people are easily emotionally manipulated about when we're discussing the topic of race, especially in America. We have an enormous amount of psychological conditioning, and a lot of that conditioning is centered around ideas about our own identity, which we truly want to believe about ourselves. And what I mean by that is that everybody likes the idea of thinking of themselves as the altruistic one that doesn't see race, that doesn't have any bias, that doesn't have any in-group preference as it is. But the reality is that the majority of people who are that way are upper class, fairly privileged, liberal white folks, you know. And for the most part, it becomes difficult to address, because what happens is that if somebody says, for instance, that they believe that America should be majority white, in America, that sounds offensive, it sounds racist, it sounds horrible. But if you extrapolate yourself from America and you go to China, or if you go to Japan, or if you go to Israel, and you say, I would like Israel, I would like Japan, I would like China to be majority Chinese, Japanese, or Jewish, those positions are okay to hold. And so what's happening, I think, in America specifically, but also in Europe, is the white European people of those countries are starting to become aware to the fact that they have been psychologically conditioned to ascend above and beyond race as much as possible, to really look and see people for who they are and judge them by their character and this, that, and the other. And a lot of us really believed that. We really took it seriously. We lived that way. We thought that everybody else was living that way. And I think what a lot of people are realizing, because of social media, because of the internet, is that a lot of the other ethnicities in America weren't on board with that decision. And so oftentimes white people are finding in their experience of the world that their commitment to seeing beyond race is not being met or reciprocated by the races that they're observing. And so I know that this is a tough thing to talk about, and I recognize that it's not the most popular thing to say, but I do really believe that there's a kind of there's a psychological issue in the West with the way that white European people think of themselves, and this seemingly innate self-loathing, this idea that we have to despise our history, that we have to be ashamed of the people that we are, or that our race is just simply colonizers. All we did was destroy all these other countries and manipulate them and steal their resources and settle in their lands. And the reality is something far more complicated and much more interesting than that. But it's something that I think really, it's something I'm going to be continually talking about, and that needs to be addressed, and the sooner the better. And let me explain a little bit more before we continue what I mean by that. The way that a race or a group of people conceive of themselves is very important. And whether or not the entirety of American culture is ready to live in a world that grounds its reality in something beyond biology, until the rest of the country is ready to do that, it's not possible to convince only one race of people to do it while the rest of them are not committed to doing it. And that's been the issue in America since the 60s. A lot of people are feeling like their commitment to the ideology is not being reciprocated. And this creates a tension that I think is pretty unavoidable. And until it's okay for people who see race as a reality, not a social construct, not something that's just skin deep, but not something that gives you the opportunity or the liberty to condemn someone for, until we can have that conversation seriously, I think these problems are going to continue. And I don't want to soapbox on it for too long, but what I'm trying to say in short is that white people need to rediscover an identity that isn't built around self-loathing and isn't built around a shame and a rejection of their history. And if they don't do that, it's very likely that white people will continue to become even more of a minority. You know, already white Europeans make up less than 16% of the world. And that's likely to continue. Most of, you know, we obviously know about the birth rates, and I won't get into all that, but I think this phenomenon of this man Connor here and the positions that he's taking is related to this feeling that has been growing for quite some time in America. So I know that was a bit of a tangent, but we'll get back to just a couple more minutes.
Like under you, sorry, what's your name?
My name is my name's Connor. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Took a little bit of a doubt there.
Oh, well, I use a pseudonym online.
Fair enough. Connor,
fair enough.
How would Connor's America look? What would it look like?
Well, quite frankly, I think we would deport people who shouldn't be here.
No, I didn't ask about deporting. What does the government look like?
What does the government look like?
Yeah.
I would say, quite frankly, it's under a sort of benevolent leader, such as
Where does he
Franco.
come from?
It could be a kind of aristocratic class. Could be someone
No, but who picks the autocrat?
Frankly, the people. I mean, we could hold a vote on it. Kings
So
were
isn't that democracy?
Well, sure. You can have a vote to get to that stage.
And then no more votes afterwards?
Absolutely.
Wow.
100%.
Wow. And if that autocrat kills you and your family, you're fine with that?
Well, I'm not going to be a part of the group that he kills, because that's the whole thing.
How do you know?
Carl Schmitt
Autocrats tend to kill everyone,
Carl
even their own
Schmitt makes
supporters.
this point very well in his work. It's the friend-enemy distinction, right? You
Carl
liberals,
Schmitt, the Nazi theoretician.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't care.
So I promise not another really long tangent, but it's important to know that Carl Schmitt, the man that they're talking about, he wrote a book called The Concept of the Political, and Medani here, or Mehdi, or I don't remember his name. He was trying to. Then I run into this all the time when you bring up Carl Schmitt. People would be like, "Oh, the Nazi political theorist," and the reality is that Carl Schmitt did become a Nazi in the 1930s, but his most important work, which was just referenced in the conversation, was written many years before the Nazi Party even existed. And the concept of the political is built upon a pretty simple idea that all of politics has to do with the distinction between who's your friend and who's your enemy. It's pretty simple, but it's very consistently castigated by left-wing thinkers, because in the future, after he wrote that book, Carl Schmitt became a Nazi.
Are you a fan of the Nazis?
I frankly don't care being called a Nazi at all.
I didn't say that. I didn't actually say that. I said, are you a fan of the Nazis?
Well, they persecuted the church a little bit. I'm not a fan of that, but...
What about the persecution of the Jews?
Well, I mean, I certainly don't support anyone's human dignity being assaulted. I'm a Catholic.
But you don't condemn Nazi persecution of the Jews?
I think that there was a little bit of persecution and stuff like that, which is bad.
We may have to rename this show because you're a little bit more than a far-right Republican.
Hey, what can I say?
I think you can say...
So this is just the last part that I wanted to talk about, is that there's something about the idea of Nazi and the word fascist that it just immediately strikes fear and terror in people. And while I commend Connor for owning his position, I think that there's something of a setup in the way that these debates are had, in that anybody who takes a right-wing position any further to the right than like Ronald Reagan is going to immediately be equated with the Nazis and called a fascist. And because of the trauma and the psychological damage that happened from Hitler in World War II, that that ideology is used as kind of a limit case, and anything that comes near it on the right wing is immediately going to be considered authoritarian. And, they had mentioned autocracy earlier, and we in the West tend to hear only the worst stories about leaders that are autocratic or theocratic even. We never hear the good stories about the benevolent leaders. And of course, there's pros and cons to every political system. The reality is that a monarchical system, for instance, if it's built on a genuinely committed and lived Christian theology, having a really wise Christian king would probably be the best case scenario for people who are Christian, right? And so this is the thing that we run into with political systems, is that it's difficult when the conversation is only allowed to happen inside of a very small boundary. And this type of conversation creates those boundaries, and it does it in a way that I think is disingenuous and just not really helpful. There's a lot of ideologies to the right and to the left of the political discourse in America. And if anything to the right is Hitler and everything to the left is Stalin, then, like we don't really have, or Mao even, we just don't really have a discourse. There's nothing to be said. We just have a default position that can't be discussed. And so there's, the Overton window is shifting, and it's something you should be aware about. There's a growing sentiment amongst young white people in America that their country is being overrun by foreigners. We can debate about how true that is or how untrue it is. The reality is that people feel that way. They're voicing that opinion. They're acting on it, organizing on the behalf of it. And so we're going to be seeing a lot more conversation pushing to the right, and it's something that people should be prepared for. And I wanted to end with on a little bit of a light note. We've been talking a lot about what right wing is and isn't, and this clip that Russell Brand had the other day, it's worth watching, and it's funny. So let's see what Mr. Russell has to say.
Far right now, making babies is far right now. Far right activists use fitness. Fitness is far right. Far right. Farming is far right. Growing food. I'm surprised they have time to grow the wheat or to tend to the cattle with all of the constant reading of Mein Kampf and Sieg Heil. Mostly I get up and I do a bit like Sieg Heil and that, and then like read Mein Kampf for a while. Then of course it's on with the Dr. Martin boots, and it's a march up and down, rallying, flag waving. Then of course, red sky at night, fascist delight. Let's see what else. Cars, alcohol makes you more right wing now. Milk's racist. Hate body odor, racism. You're racist. It's an extraordinary inventory now. Do you see that? It feels like we're being encircled on every conceivable side in order to curtail us and contain us in an absolute paddock of racism. Stay free. See.
All right. So you heard it there. Everything that's good and plentiful that has to do with nature is far right. If you drink milk, you are a Nazi. If you farm, you're a Nazi. If you don't believe democracy is the best form of government, you're a Nazi. Basically, if you don't believe in the liberal paradigm, you're a Nazi. And we all know that now. And I wanted to say one more thing before I take off, is that I'm sure you might have heard of this Sydney Sweeney ad that everybody's been talking about. It was a devastatingly racist ad that really, it made a lot of people feel uncomfortable because it talked about genetics, and the implication was that race was a real thing. Man, and everybody was really uncomfortable with it. And something I've noticed over the years, it's like every time, maybe not every time, let's say like 80 to 90% of the time, some type of event is put before the public's eyes, and that event, it seems to me, is designed or curated maybe to cause Black people and white people to get angry with each other, or maybe cause white people to get angry with Mexican people, or Mexican people to get angry with white, right? This happens so much, and it's like, man, every time that happens, it seems it's a guy like this that's responsible for it. So if you're looking where my cursor is here, this is Jay Schottenstein. He is he's a member of the tribe, if you will, and he was responsible for that very racist white ad that was put in American Eagle. And isn't it interesting? Now, say what you want about Mr. Schottenstein here. He's very upfront about his beliefs. He's very much Jewish. He's very proud of it. He spends a lot of time in Israel. He gives gratuitously to Benjamin Netanyahu and the regime there in Israel. He donates a lot to the organizations in America that promote Jewish interests. And so after 10 years of noticing that when these stories that seem to take off in the media, and when they take off, they seem to create in their wake a debate about whites and blacks and race and all this stuff. It's always somebody like Mr. Schottenstein there that's doing it. And so I did a little digging into his history because I was just curious. I saw that he studied under a certain rabbi, and I've heard of that rabbi before. So I was like, I wonder how interested Mr. Schottenstein is in the Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud. And lo and behold, not only is he interested in the Babylonian Talmud, Schottenstein's Talmud project was completed just 3 years ago. So his father and then himself, after his father died, contributed. I think it ended up being, it was hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to this project to translate the Babylonian Talmud into English. And so it's interesting because the Talmud has some things in it that would suggest maybe that his actions as CEO of American Eagle are not so surprising, but actually emerge from a philosophy which is centered around the idea of Jewish supremacy. And so just some food for thought. I figured I would leave you guys with that last story. And then, I just wanted to say a couple things in closing. There's going to be a lot of temptation to, especially for people on the right wing, there's going to be a lot of pressure for people to be radicalized, for people to succumb to the temptation to genuinely become hateful, racist, bigoted. And I just hope that people are praying. I hope that you're staying, focused on your heart, staying strong mentally, and remembering that whatever it is that's happening out here, this political battle or confrontation that we're experiencing now with this liberal paradigm, whatever it is that you want to call this thing, it's important not to let it get the best of you. And I hope that, like I said, I hope that you guys are praying. I hope that you're staying focused on what's important, spending time outside, spending time with people you love and care about. And as always, I appreciate your time and attention. I will see you. Today is Thursday, so I will be back on Sunday evening, and I might be ready to do the book review. I'm not sure yet, but we'll be doing something then. So God bless you guys. Thank you